Welcome to another episode of the Inappropriate Growth Podcast. Today, I have the privilege of speaking with a true legend in the world of product management and development, David Fradin. With a career spanning over 5 decades, David has been instrumental in building successful products at some of the most iconic companies, including HP and Apple, where he worked alongside industry giants like Steve Jobs. David is not only a seasoned product expert, but also the head of a professional development company. That company specializes in creating insanely great products, product management, and product marketing. David has trained thousands of managers worldwide, drawing from his extensive experience with over 75 products and services across 11 separate startups. David is also the author of several influential books, including Building Insanely Great Products, Organizing and Managing Insanely Great Products, and the Successful Product Design and Management Toolkit. Join us as we dive into David's incredible journey, explore his insights on product development, and learn from his vast experience in the industry. This is an episode you don't want to miss. Let's get started.
Welcome to Inappropriate Growth, the podcast where we get real about the grind behind the glory. I'm Paul, your host, and I'm here to take you on a journey through the untold stories of business triumphs. We might raise some eyebrows, but it's all about the hustle and we don't fit the mold. Here we're talking about the kind of effort that doesn't just push the envelope, it shreds it to pieces. We're building a community where the norm is to defy norms. So buckle up, because we're diving deep into the beginnings that were anything but humble. The times when giving up seemed like the only option. We'll also dig into all of those wild, insane, and out-of-the-box strategies that led to massive growth. From growth hacks to best practices, this podcast will be fast, furious, and should be a whole lot of fun. Join us as we redefine what it means to grow and turn business growth into an art form. Welcome to Inappropriate Growth.
All right, we are recording. All right, welcome to, we're on season 2, episode 6 of the Inappropriate Growth Podcast. We have today Mr. David Fradin. Am I saying that correctly?
Yes.
2 for 2. All right, David Fradin, why don't you save me the trouble and tell me exactly where you are and how you got there?
I'm located in Los Gatos, which is in Santa Clara County, commonly known as Silicon Valley. Been here since 1980. Came here after being found under a cabbage leaf in Detroit, Michigan. Jethro Bodine was my next door neighbor, and went to Cass Tech High School after being in the Civil Air Patrol, where I got my private pilot's license. And then after graduating from Cass Tech in aeronautical technology, I went to University of Michigan in aerospace engineering. And when I got there, after 3 weeks, I was bored and shocked that the university did not have a flying club. So I started the University of Michigan Flyers, which to date has trained about 5,000 pilots. Many of them turned into airline pilots. One of them turned into the head of the Blue Angels. And in my sophomore year, my aerospace engineering professor came to me and said, I noticed you knew how to organize, and I served on Lyndon Johnson's Supersonic Transport Advisory Committee, and the SST is in trouble in Congress because environmentalists were thinking that it might destroy the environment. And would you be interested in starting a nationwide student organization in favor of an American SST? And he said we could call it FAST, Fly America's SST, and not have any idea what I was getting myself into. I formed it, got over 40 chapters nationwide, got funding from the aerospace industry, testified before Congress, went to meetings at the White House in my pink polyester suit, just like John Travolta, and uh, and then the SST got shot down. So we changed the name to Federation of Americans Supporting Science and Technology because there was this huge anti-technology feeling in the country in the early 70s, blaming technology for our environmental ills without realizing that all technology is the organization of knowledge for practical purposes. And if you use technology inappropriately, certainly you will damage the environment. But if you use technology appropriately, you can save the environment and resolve the issues of climate change. So we lobbied Congress for project independence to get us off of oil. That I was not successful at, but we also lobbied Congress to fund the space shuttle, and that I was successful at. So by my junior year in college, I was spending a month out of the year in Washington, D.C., and noted and visited aerospace companies and around the United States. And you go in and they be all sitting at World War II gray battleship type desks, facing each other, and four engineers that are highly trained would share one telephone. And I said, obviously, these companies have very little respect for an aerospace engineer. And then I took an engineering mechanics class, which started at 8 a.m., which was part of my curriculum. And I did a very dumb thing by sitting in the front row, and I kept falling asleep in the middle of the class. And the professor rewarded me with a D, which would have caused me, if I stayed in that curriculum, in having to stay another semester in college. And after 4 years, now I've had enough of school. I got to get out of here. So I switched to a new degree field called interdisciplinary engineering, which I joke about as being a lot of everything and a little of nothing. But I was able to take courses in political science, business, economics, management, and so forth, and journalism, and turned out to be the appropriate things for a future product manager to know how to do. So after I graduated from college, I couldn't get a job because nobody had any idea that Michigan was producing these BSs in interdisciplinary engineering. And in fact, I'd gone to the dean, Rigoni at the time from the automotive industry. He was head of the engineering school. And I said, look, you have all these recruiters coming on campus, and they're looking for mechanical engineers, looking for aeronautical engineers, they're looking for nautical engineers, and so forth. But they're not going to look for interdisciplinary engineering. Uh, if I wrote a letter, would you send it out to the recruiters to these companies and tell them to come here prepared to recruit some interdisciplinary engineers, technically trained managers, as Cy Romo from TRW had described in the National Science Foundation. And it was the NSF that funded my particular curriculum. And Dean Rigoni said, no, I won't do that. So I never got an interview, couldn't find a job. And which really turned me off on this notion that a school like Michigan, at least at that time, could produce people with specific kinds of training, but provides no path whatsoever for them to get gainful employment after they graduate. So I moved the FAST organization to Washington, D.C. I moved into Andrew Mellon's old mansion near DuPont Circle, right next to what was the name of it? The liberal think tank next door, whose name escapes me. It was also targeted by Nixon to get blown up in like 72 or 73. But thankfully, he didn't do that because my office was right next door. And so I was in Washington when Nixon resigned and decided after a couple of years I couldn't be a student anymore and turned the organization over to some students and was recruited by the Environmental Balance Association of Minnesota to go to Minnesota. And there I helped pioneer the field of environmental mediation and help mediate an Anheuser-Busch malt dispute in Moorhead, Minnesota, and help mediate a resolution to, at that time, the largest environmental dispute in the nation's history over the reserve mining company's dumping of taconite tailings into Lake Superior. And so I was successful at that, so much so that the Duluth Herald called me the because of my shuttle diplomacy, shuttle mediation. He called me in their headline, the Henry Kissinger of northern Minnesota. So I got that resolved. And Al Quie, who is a Republican representative from southeastern Michigan, excuse me, southeastern Minnesota, decided to run for governor. So I got on his advisory committee, and then and I wrote his business climate paper, his economics paper, his taxes paper, position papers, his environmental position papers, and his energy position papers. And then I coached him for his debates and got him to speak more than one sentence coherently. And he was very successful in the debates, beating Rudy Perpich, who was the incumbent governor. And after Quee won, the night of the election, he promised me that I would become the director of energy for the state of Minnesota. But he was a born again Christian who never believed in providing any loyalty back to the people that got him to where he was. Jimmy Carter suffered from the same ailment, if you could call it that. So he let me twist slowly in the wind and never appointed me to any position in government, even though the head of the Republican Party encouraged him to reward me with a position along the lines that the people that helped you bring your vision for the state in your campaign, and he had previously asked me to take over his campaign with 3 weeks to go because he was losing by 10 points. And I was able to turn it around and, we were losing by 20 points. I was able to turn it around and we won the election by 10 points. And the way I did it is Roger Ailes was my pollster. He's the one that later went on to start Fox News a few years later. And I would get a poll every day and tell me what the issues are that people were concerned about and how salient those issues are. And with that data, I could then have our Speakers Bureau, Quee, Lou Alberg, the lieutenant governor candidate, and our advertising, our radio, and our print ads have changed the message so that we can address the issues that were most important in the different parts of Minnesota, which is broken up into three parts. Northern Minnesota, which is mining and steel. The central part of Minnesota is predominantly where the Twin Cities are, and then southern Minnesota, which is predominantly agriculture. So we won that, and I did not successfully get a job in the administration. So Hewlett Packard had trouble at the time citing new facilities around the country, and they knew that I could resolve those kinds of disputes from the press coverage I had in the state. So they recruited me to become work in the corporate PR department and help with the siting of new facilities, which I did for a year or so. And I noticed I had word processing all the way back to my flying club, and I thought it was kind of strange that the PR department at Hewlett Packard was not using word processing. It was all electric, Selectric typewriters. And the Dave Kirby, who was the manager of the department, he used a mechanical typewriter. He was an old journalist. So I introduced to the department an HP internal program called Slate, which was word processing that ran on a mini computer off of a terminal. And it was the only department of the company at the time that knew how to type. So it was a fairly successful sort of internal product management introduction. So one of the nice things about HP at the time, and I was handling Dave Packard's personal PR as the chairman of the board at the time. So after that, I was able to transfer to the Information Networks division as a product manager for a unified user interface across all HP mini computers and terminals and new personal computers, and a HP Inform executive report writer that sat upon a relational database and a data dictionary before Oracle came out with its relational database. Apple noticed that I knew what I was doing, and they recruited me to come join them and bring to market the first hard disk drive for a personal computer, which was the Apple Profile. and it was very cheap. It was only $3,500, and it was an enormous size. It had 5 megabytes of space for $3,500, and people couldn't understand how anybody ever would ever need that kind of size for data storage. Then the senior management at Apple noticed that I knew how to manage, and they asked me to take over the Apple III product line as the group product manager. And about 2 or 3 weeks after I started in that new position, responsible for this product line that had sales of about $600 million a year, the executive committee went off to Pahara Dunes, and they canceled the product line and didn't ask me anything about it. So a week later, I was coming out of corporate headquarters, and Ida Cole, who was then the marketing manager for the division, ran outside and grabbed a hold of me. She later became international VP of Microsoft. And she says, John wants to talk to you. And I said, John who? And she said, John Scully. I said, oh, the president? I've met him once or twice. Okay, fine. So I walk into a little conference room, and Scully's sitting at the end of the little table, and he's holding a Super VisiCalc spreadsheet. Super VisiCalc was a program that ran on the Apple III. It was bigger than VisiCalc, which was the predecessor to Excel. So you could do very large spreadsheets. And next to me was sitting Joe Graziano, who was the CFO of the company. And across from him was the VP of manufacturing, Del Yoakum, who later became president of Apple a few years later. So Scully says to me, we've got $20 million in piece parts, which in today's dollars would be several $100 million. And the company's sales at the time, I forget, somewhere's about $1 billion. So if they had to write that off, it would have been a terrible hit on the bottom line at the next quarterly earnings call. And Scully himself would have taken a big hit on the value of his stock. So he said, Dave, we got all these piece parts spread between our manufacturing in Singapore, in Dallas, and in Cork, Ireland. What should we do about it? And I said, what do you mean we, paleface? And he didn't laugh. So I had to explain the joke to him that back in the 50s, there was a television show called The Lone Ranger who wore a mask, and he rode a white hat. He rode around on a white horse called Trigger. And he's buried next to Trigger, by the way, now. And he had one silver bullet, and he had an Indian sidekick named Tonto. So when I tell this story to Indians, I have to say it's an American Indian sidekick. And they're in the desert, and they get surrounded by 10,000 yelling, screaming Indians. And the Lone Ranger turns to Tonto and says, Tonto, we're surrounded by 10,000 yelling, screaming Indians. What should we do about it? And Tonto says, what do you mean we, paleface? So Scully finally laughed, and I said, I've been trying to put together a promotion in order to help sell Apple IIIs, and I take the promotion to a Marcom department in my division, who takes it to a Marcom department in corporate, who takes it to a promotions department in corporate, who takes it to retail sales in corporate, who takes it to the manufacturing, for the sales organization, who then takes it to our manufacturing reps, principals, who then takes it to manufacturers, reps, salespeople, to dealers, who then takes it for the principal of the dealer, who then takes it to the salespeople in the dealership. And when I started working here at Apple, I took a part-time job on nights and weekends at a local computer dealership so I could understand what was going on at the dealer level. And I said none of the information that was put out by the divisions promoting their products was reaching the individual salespeople in the dealership. And I said, John, do you know what it's like pushing a wet noodle? And he laughed, and he said, what should we do? And I said, well, let me tell you a few stories. I told him the story of Alpha General's new mini computer. They tried to develop it in their corporate headquarters outside of Boston. They were unsuccessful, so they moved the team to Raleigh-Durham, North Carolina. And that was the source of the book called The Soul of a New Machine. And then we had the situation with the IBM PC. They several times tried to get the PC to be developed in Schenectady, New York, where IBM's headquarters was. But the salespeople at IBM felt it would cannibalize their large commission checks So they canceled those developments, and IBM got smart and they moved the development to Boca Raton, Florida, as far away from Schenectady as they could and outside the influence of the sales executives. And they developed it, copied the business plan for the Apple II, and they brought it to market. I said, well, if you give me the authority commensurate with the responsibility for the product line, we'll be able to sell these things and service, support them, manufacture them. So he said, okay, make me a proposal, which I did on July 15th, 1983. And in that meeting with the executive committee, compared at the suggestion of Maxine Graham, who was helping me put the business plan together, that I compared the options that were available for the product line against Apple values, in addition to your traditional comparison against the balance sheet and profits and ROI and so forth. So the turning point of the meeting and the turning point of the product line was when the VP of Sales and Marketing, Floyd Kwame, who later became a very successful venture capitalist and advisor to George Bush on science and technology, he says, Dave, if a dealer calls you and we decide at this meeting to cancel the product line, or we decide at this meeting to allow the product to continue as long as the market continues to buy it, what would you say? I said, well, if you allow the product, the dealer calls me and the decision is to let the market decide. I'll tell the dealer that. That's, as long as you sell it, we'll continue to support it, develop it, and help market it. But if you decide to shut the product line down, and everyone in the room knew because sitting in the back of the room was Ann Bowers, who's the VP of HR. And in my book, Building and Selling Great Products, when I was researching for that book, I think Ann was instrumental in getting Apple to adopt Apple values, which included the value of good management, the value of building quality products, the value of having empathy for your customers. And everyone knew that if they shut down the product line abruptly like that, they would violate those values. So I said, Floyd, if you decide to shut the product line down, I'll give the dealer your phone number. And everybody laughed, and they got the point that it would be a bad decision to shut it down. So a couple of weeks later, I got a call from Ken Zerby, who was coming back to Cupertino from his assignment as the general manager of setting up Europe. And he was going to take over the management of the Apple III product line, continue to be the CFO, have Graziano report to him, and pick up the peripherals division and the accessories division and a few other problem areas of the company. And he asked me to become the business manager of the product line and gave me a $4 million budget, 17 people, signature authority for up to $200,000, no questions asked, no counter signatures required. And he asked me to take the job on, and I said, sure. So you want me to be the general manager? He said, no, we can't call you the general manager. We'll call you the business unit manager. I said, oh, great. I'm the bum for short. So I became the Apple III bum. We sold 1/3 of all the Apple IIIs, which at the time was the third most popular computer in the world in terms of unit sales. After the Apple II, the PPP from DEC, and then the Apple III. And we produced hundreds of millions of dollars in profits, enough to help fund Steve Jobs' development of the Macintosh, and also to keep 1,000 to 1,500 Apple employees employed. Steve was the one behind trying to kill the product line. This is before he learned around 1989 from Dave Packard that the important thing is that you should cannibalize your own products, because if you don't cannibalize your own products, somebody else will for you. So I went on from Apple. They gave me a severance package, which was very nice because they knew they had to cut back, having lost the profits from the Apple III, and the Mac was not yet shipping. And I joined the company and brought the first all software text-to-speech software called Smooth Talker, which was great for parties, and that's what we sold $1.2 million worth of it for. People would put it on the table at a party, and people would type in swear words just to see what the computer would say. And then I went from there to the associate director of the personal computer industry service. and a market research firm called DataQuest, which was later purchased by Nielsen. And then I've been involved in startups and other things since then. And the last 12 years, I've had my own company, which teaches and consults on product management and product marketing worldwide. My number one client is Cisco. I've taught the Botswana Telecommunications Company, Capital One Bank, Diebold, Kaiser, and others on the principles of what it takes to have a successful product.
All right. Well, that's a lot. You covered a few of my questions in that answer. But having worked at Apple and HP, I mean, obviously, you've seen product management at a high level from the inside. From what I'm hearing, some of those insights came really early, with your experience in Washington. What unexpected and critical insights do you think you gained during that tenure? Like something that maybe they don't teach in school?
Well, a couple of things. One is a product manager needs to be a good mediator. And by mediation, you understand what the needs and wants of each of the parties, and then you try to find a common ground and bring them together. Because a product manager is always wrestling between sales, engineering, marketing, finance, uh, uh, over resources and direction and positioning of the product and so forth. So you got to be a good mediator, and mediation is not taught in that I know of in our schools. Neither, for the most part, is product management. Um, it's People prefer to go into finance, thinking that's where all the money is, and happen to be right. But a lot of that's changing. There's a lot more people now that are doing product management, and a few schools have cropped up. My textbook, which was published by Wiley, little 796-page pamphlet called "Successful Product Design and Management," is used by two MBA schools in India, and it's trained well over 1,000 product managers between those two schools. IIPM at Ladlo, and then lovely Professional University are the two schools there that use that my textbook. Mediation is one. The second thing is the thing that I disliked about large organizations is the politics that goes on. And I know a little bit about politics, and politics is who gets what in our society. And those that don't play in politics, or those that don't pay attention to politics and particular elections, are the ones that usually end up with getting nothing from society. So, but the nature of the politics that I experienced in these large organizations was petty, vicious, and the entire purpose was to knock down the people around you so you could climb higher on the corporate rungs of the ladder and make more money, as opposed to having empathy for the customer. But a lot of that's changed over the years. More and more companies have empathy for the customer. Companies like Amazon, companies like Apple uh, have that, and that's what they focus on, as Tim Cook at Apple talks about. If we have empathy for our customers and take care of them and build quality products, the customers will take care of us. They'll buy our products, and then we don't have to worry about the bottom line, as opposed to other companies like Boeing, who all they cared about was time to market and profitability, and increasing their dividends so that their shareholders make money to the expense of quality and safety. And that's why Boeing is having difficulties today compared to Airbus.
You've authored books on product success. You talked about textbooks and stuff. Could you share a key principle or approach that consistently drives product development? And I'm thinking more from your experience writing books.
Yeah, I think the most important thing that I found in my experience and my research for my books is the most important thing a company needs to do is to understand what is it their customer wants to do. Why do they want to do it? When do they want to do it? Where do they want to do it? How do they want to do it? How important getting it done is to them, and how satisfied are they with the current way of getting it done. So, for example, most innovation is nothing more than doing the same thing faster, better, with higher quality. So, writing started with a piece of burned wood or charcoal and a cave wall. And then the caveman noticed it was kind of hard to take his writings to the next cave for the other caveman to read. So they came up with a tablet that they could carry around. And then they noticed their hands always got dirty when they were writing. So they surrounded the charcoal with wood and they called it a pencil. And then they noticed the pencil would always wear down and they'd have to constantly sharpen it or they'd run out. So they noticed they could take a quill from a duck and use and make ink and use a fountain pen. Then someone invented the ballpoint pen to replace that. And someone did a mechanical typewriter, then an electric typewriter, and then word processing, which was dedicated on a Xerox machine or on a weighing word processor. And then the software was ported over to a personal computer. You're able to do word processing on your computer. And that's the way it's been ever since the early 1980s.
The tech landscape evolves rapidly. Um, how do you stay ahead of trends and how do you adapt strategies to changing market dynamics?
Well, it goes back to what I talked about earlier, understanding what it is that your prospective customer wants to do and how major trends and patterns in society are going to affect what it is they want to do. So we have about 16 items, which I call the perfect storm of things that are happening that are going to affect the future. Climate change is one of those. Another possibility of a pandemic, the digital transformation, especially like AI coming into small, medium, and large businesses and in everyday transactions, robotics, the changing birth rates, where there are cities in the Midwest are begging for immigrants because they're of their aging population. In Japan, there's not enough young people to take care of the old people, so that's going to drive robotics. New food innovations, not only in the production of food, but also in the distribution, consumption, and waste of food. I think half of all the food that's produced in the world is wasted, adding to climate change. Autonomous vehicles will affect things. Augmented and virtual reality, marketing automation. We were talking about that earlier, where things that used to work in marketing 6 months ago are not working now. Gene splicing. These are just a few of these 16 uh, perfect storms that are going to have massive impacts on the world and on individual lives in the future.
Uh, you offer a range of consulting services, right? And I'm curious, how do strategic partnerships and collaborations play a role in achieving the success that you get?
Well, once you figure out what your target customer wants to do, then you ask yourself, do you and your company have the resources and the competencies uh, to provide a solution to what it is that the customer wants to do? If you don't, then you can go out and seek a partner that has those capabilities and develop an alliance or a partnership or a collaboration with them to fill in the areas in which you don't have the competencies to get that job done.
One of the things that I've been hearing a lot lately, and it's really echoing what you're saying, is don't fall in love with your solution, fall in love with the problem.
That's
Uh,
right. That's right.
that's kind of what you're echoing. It's learn what they want and expect.
The focus on the problem. The people can't tell you what they want or need, which is the common refrain. The reason for that is they first have to know that they have a problem, and then they have to come up with a solution to tell you that that's what they want or need. And a classic example of that is Henry Ford allegedly went out and he asked people, "Do you want an inexpensive car?" And most people did not even know what a car is at that point in time, the early 1900s. They said, "No, I want a faster horse." So their problem was the thing that they wanted to do is to get from one place to another place faster. So that's why they said they wanted a faster horse. But if he had gone out and observed people beating horses to go faster, he would have said, aha, and maybe that's perhaps where the term horseless carriage uh, got coined. And back then, if the internet existed and he was doing his market research based upon people searching for a solution to their problem on the internet, and he used the word car or automobile, he would have found that nobody was searching for a car or an automobile. And he would have concluded using that big data, those analytics, that there is no market for a car and no market for an automobile. And therefore, our parking lots and our jammed streets around the world are an illusion because nobody really wants those things. They want a faster horse.
I want to say thank you so much for being a
Well,
guest on Inappropriate Growth.
good to meet
And
you.
just know that if you want something to grow, sometimes you have to do something inappropriate.